Good morning again. Welcome to the Regional Transportation Committee, Tuesday, April 15, 2025. My name is Colleen Whitlow, and I will be facilitating the meeting this morning. On to public comment. Is there anyone here, virtually or public in person, that would like to discuss any comments for us today?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll give it a second, but I do not see any hands raised online or in person. Thank you.
Thank you very much. While we're waiting for folks to join us this morning, we're going to move the discussion item up before action items. I would like to welcome Nora Kern, who is going to be discussing the corridor planning program update.
All right. Good morning. My name is Nora Kern. I manage our sub-area project planning team. So I'm going to give a little bit of an update on our corridor planning program and also talk about an upcoming call for letters of interest associated with this program. So starting with just a quick refresher, this is a relatively new program. We started this as a pilot in 2022, and the goal of the program is to really allow DRCOG to take a little bit more of a leadership role in helping advance projects that are identified in the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. So it is focused kind of primarily on the 4 types of projects that are listed out, the regionally funded projects listed out in the RTP, which include the BRT corridors, the corridor transit projects, the arterial safety regional Vision Zero projects, and the multimodal corridor projects. So like I said, we started with a little bit of a smaller pilot in 2022. We've since expanded the program and selected 2 projects in 2024, which are underway, which I'll give a brief update about today. Those 2 are the Colfax BRT Next Alternatives Analysis and then a Sheridan Corridor Safety Study. So after our pilot, this program was formally adopted as a 2024 to 2027 Transportation Improvement Program set-aside. So there are $3 million in the TIP allocated for this program, and it is one of the new format programs where essentially the funds are awarded to DRCOG, and then DRCOG staff help manage all of the administrative and logistics items for each of these projects, everything from working on the IGA with CDOT to managing consultant procurement, and then co-managing or managing the projects. The idea behind this was to really make these as easy as possible for our member governments and to also help with those regional projects where maybe there's not a single logical lead agency. So the projects are nominated by local agencies, which I'll be touching on here in a moment. And, you know, like I said, we're managing these projects, but we really see these as very close partnerships with our local agency partners, as well as RTD and CDOT. So there's $3 million total, and this first half of the program was 2024 to 2027, and there were 2 projects selected that are currently underway for kind of the first half of the program. The first is the Colfax Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT Next project, which my colleague Jacob is leading. So this is one we're working very closely with the City of Aurora, as well as RTD and CDOT on. And it's a project that's in the Regional Transportation Plan, but it essentially was a line on the map. There had been very little planning work done. And so it's looking at extending the bus rapid transit from the end of the current kind of project that's under construction at I-225 all the way out to around E-470. So it's a really exciting corridor. There's a lot going on out there. And the goal of the project is going to be to develop a locally preferred alternative that can then move to the next phase of development. This project is in the 2030 staging period in the Regional Transportation Plan. So there's a lot to do in 5 years. So it was a great opportunity for DRCOG to kind of help keep things moving and get things kind of hopefully on track to hit that deadline. So just a quick overview of the schedule. And again, we're we're just getting started, and if you have more questions, my colleague Jacob would be the best person to talk to, but it got kicked off last fall. A team led by Nelson Nygaard was selected to lead the study in the project. So far, it's developed a purpose, need, and goals and objectives document. We're now in phase 1 of our public engagement and kind of developing that existing conditions report. Over the summer, we'll be moving to developing alternatives and then looking to wrap up the study towards the end of this calendar year. Next, the second of the 2 kind of initial projects in the set-aside program is a Sheridan Corridor Safety Study. This is a study looking at Sheridan Boulevard from I-76 to US 285. It's a really exciting study because this is one of those truly regional corridors. There's 6 local governments. It's a CDOT corridor. There's obviously RTD bus service. It's also touches on 3 different counties. So it's a very complex corridor that's been a real challenge for any one jurisdiction to kind of take the lead on. The goal is to reduce serious and fatal crashes. It's currently on our high injury network for the region. A significant portion of the corridor is on the critical corridors network, so it's one of the corridors with the highest rate of crashes in the region. So the goal is to develop some projects, but also to really help with the regional collaboration. Because it's so complicated, figuring out who does what is one of the biggest challenges on this corridor. So you can see there all the different governments that are involved, again, as well as CDOT and RTD. So this one's on a very similar timeline. We kicked off in the fall. Over this kind of winter, spring, we've been focusing on just understanding what's going on, what projects have happened, what are the concerns of the community, what does the data tell us about crashes. This summer, we'll be moving into developing recommendations and alternatives, and then doing a feasibility assessment, which is a big challenge on this corridor. Anyone familiar with Sheridan knows it's not an easy corridor, and then looking to wrap up also towards the end of the calendar year. So that brings me to our upcoming call for projects. This is for the second half of funds for the TIP set aside, so it'll be the 2026 to 2027 funds. There is another $1.5 million available. I should note that there's no local match. CDOT is allowing us to use toll credits, so no local match required. We're going to have a call for letters of interest through mid-June. Those letters of interest must be submitted by a local or regional agency, so it has to be a government agency. The projects must be in the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, so that's one of the strictest elements of eligibility. It must be one of those projects that are specifically called out in Table 3.1. There are a couple exclusions, so we're not planning on looking at any limited access roadways, trails, as well as projects that have moved to the design and construction phase. So these are planning funds, so this will be only planning work. So anything that's kind of past planning would not be eligible. And we'll have selection over the summer, and we'll be coming back probably to this committee in July or August to review the projects recommended by an interagency selection committee. So with that, happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Nora. Before we get to the questions, could you all put your name tag so I can Today is my first day doing this, so I apologize for not knowing everybody's name and how to pronounce everyone's name. So anyway, and thank you, Nora, for your presentation.
Certainly.
And for those who came in a little bit late, we decided to go with discussion items before we did action items for a quorum, and now we have a quorum, so we can proceed. So are there now questions for Nora this morning?
Sorry to be late. But I've said this before, just wanted to reiterate how I'm glad you're taking on Sheridan, recognizing all those jurisdictions involved in the complexity, but that means it's all the more vital what you're doing. Thank you.
Yes, it's definitely one of the hardest corridors we could have picked to look at.
Are there other questions?
Hi, Chris Nicholson, RTD. For the 2026-2027 call for projects, are there already projects that are, like, I would assume to be able to get that funding, folks would have already sort of spoken with you and said, hey, we're interested in this. Are you aware of projects that are already in the pipeline that are like trying to line up for that kind of funding?
Yeah, well, there's actually only about 30 eligible projects, because if you take all the there's not that many projects in the RTP, and then a number of those have already advanced to construction or in the kind of design phase. So we've talked to some. I think we don't have any specific projects in mind, but again, the list isn't that long. I think the BRT projects are all good candidates. Another big focus of this program is the projects that are in the earlier staging periods. So any additional planning work required on those projects that are in the 2020 to 2030 staging period would be kind of a top priority. And then starting to work on those ones for the 2030 staging period would kind of be the next highest priority. So off the top of my head, I think probably the BRT, the transit, and the arterial safety are the ones that kind of have the most need for regional collaboration. A lot of the multimodal capital projects already are kind of in plans or in various stages of motion with the local government. So those three categories are kind of the ones most likely.
Got it. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Nora, very much for your time this morning.
Great. Thank you all.
I'd like to move up to number 3. We missed that as we were going into the discussion item. Are there any changes to the March 18th, 2025 Regional Transportation Committee meeting summary? Comments or changes? That will be approved, and we'll move on to the first action item of today. It'll be the Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 and Human Services Transportation Set-Aside Recommendation Projects. This will be presented by Travis Noon, our Program Manager for Administration and Finance. Sir?
All right. Good morning, everybody. I have for your consideration here today the recommended awards for Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 and the Human Services Transportation Set-Aside for fiscal year 26. Just a couple reminders about these funds here. So DRCOG is the designated recipient of Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 funds for the Denver Aurora urbanized area, and that funding provides approximately $2.9 or $3 million annually for transit projects that benefit older adults and individuals with disabilities. In addition, DRCOG has set aside for human services transportation as part of the 2024-2027 TIP, and that set aside was $8 million over those 4 years, or $2 million a year that benefit those same populations in the same transit projects. For both of these funding streams, DRCOG typically releases a call for projects annually. And this year we released that in November of 2024. We received proposals from 10 organizations that requested over $5.8 million in support for their programs. And we have approximately $5.3 million available for the period of July 1, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. All these proposals were reviewed and scored by a panel who made the recommendations here for your consideration. So the recommended awards are in your packet as well. I have 2 slides here of them, but if you want to look at them together, there's a full table. So you'll see here in this slide, there's recommended awards for ongoing mobility management and operating projects. Mobility management projects kind of cover a lot of different coordination activities, which includes support for local coordinating councils, the regional coordinating council, information and assistance services, as well as one call, one click call centers. They also projects for volunteer coordination, but most of the mobility management money actually goes towards purchased transit services through brokerages, ran through DRCOG's Area Agency on Aging, as well as Douglas County operate trip brokerages. There's a few capital projects here on this slide for software, and then replacements of vehicles, as well as one expansion that was recommended for Douglas County. You'll notice that some of the vehicles weren't recommended. So Able Light there is recommended 2 out of 5 vehicles. The reason those weren't recommended was mostly because of the mileage that was on those vehicles. They were generally less than 50,000 miles outside of the 4-year useful lifespan, but less than 50,000 miles. On this slide here, again, you'll see the operating mobility management projects. The one project that wasn't recommended at all was for Eaton Senior Communities Foundation, and that project was deemed ineligible after we read through the proposal. mostly because they are a very closed-door service, but also the proposal seemed like it was supplanting funding that they're running these programs already with federal funds. And then there's some other capital projects here to replace vehicles, EVs, some other infrastructure projects, EV infrastructure is out to VIA as well. So I have a recommended motion here for you all, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Travis. Are there any questions this morning? First action item.
All right, Ron Pepstrop, DRCOG. Travis, just one question. When you mentioned closed door, I think for Eden, can you just describe that for the committee?
Yeah, so they will only serve the people who live at their housing facilities, and so their low-income housing facilities isn't open to the public. There's some other closed-door services that do get these funds, but their programs for individuals with disability are open to anybody with individuals with disability.
Question. Is there a motion for recommending this action item today?
So moved, Deborah Johnson.
Very much. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passes. Thank you, Travis, for your time this morning. Move on to number 5, our fiscal year 2026-2029 Transportation Improvement Program. This will be presented by Todd Cottrell, sir, our Project and Program Delivery Manager.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair, and welcome members. So this morning we have a new tip for you to review and hopefully recommend. We're looking at the 2026-2029 Transportation Improvement Program. And we have a couple documents that's contained within your recommendation this morning. One of them is the tip that I just mentioned. On our website, we have broken out Appendix F, which is the project descriptions. This is simply because that is such a large file. So that is part of the motion and recommendation that we're looking for this morning. It also includes the errata sheet changes. The errata sheet changes simply list the changes that staff is proposing to the TIP document from since it was released for its public comment period. And of course, the second document is the ONZO conformity determination. But before I get into information about the TIP itself, I just wanted to sort of set the table a little bit in terms of programming here at DRCOG. So obviously we know MetroVision sets that overall regional vision, outlines it by themes, outcomes, and objectives. The transportation theme sort of sets the regional transportation plan, or the RTP. RTP looks out at a longer 20-year horizon and guides those regional transportation investments. It is outlined in several different ways, including vision projects, numerous ways to list fiscally constrained projects, including the regionally significant projects, also regionally important projects, projects that are listed individually but do not rise to that level of being regionally significant for air quality, and of course, what we are referred to as buckets, or programmatic investment categories. And finally, the MetroVision the TIP implements the RTP. So the TIP's very much different than what the RTP is. The TIP looks at a short-range 4-year planning horizon and is going to list out individual projects containing specific types of funds and years of program dollars. And so not only does it contain projects that DRCOG programs, but also looks at all federal funds, regardless of who programs them, for transportation projects within the region. So it includes those projects from CDOT, from RTD. It may even include other projects that are locally funded if they rise to that level of being regionally significant. Federal law dictates that a new TIP is created every 4 years, but DRCOG does create a new TIP document and TIP program every 2 years, and this is mainly to align ourselves with the annual statewide transportation improvement program. However, we do calls every 2 TIPs, so mainly those TIPs happen every 4 years. The most important thing to point out about this 26 to 29 draft transportation improvement program is that there were no new calls for projects that were associated with this document. And of course, when we adopt this after that for those following 2 years, this is not a static document. We amend in some form or fashion, at least almost on a monthly basis. It's important to realize the projects that DRCOG selected that are contained within this tip. And most tips do carry over from tip to tip. The last call that we had took place in 2022 and 23. During COVID, we did 4 calls for projects. For those who were around during that, that was a very involved process. But almost $500 million were invested into the region, programming, again, 5 funding sources over 6 years and over those 2 previous tips, so the 22 to 25 tip and the 24 to 27 tip. And again, like I said, a lot of those projects that were programmed during that time frame are carried forth into this draft document. Of course, because of the region's non-attainment status for ozone, we must reduce pollutants. And when we look at these pollutants, the conformity is regional. It's not going to be based on individual projects. So we're looking at the entirety of the regional transportation plan and the tip itself. When we investigated the projects that were contained in this draft 26 to 29 tip, we noticed that there were no new regionally significant projects contained within this draft tip as compared to the current 24 to 27 tip and the current 2050 RTP. So therefore, we were not required to go back and rerun the federal conformity nor the state greenhouse gas reduction analysis. So therefore, that analysis does carry forward to this draft document. There was numerous opportunities for the public to comment on this draft document. Our public comment process opened on February 12th. We did provide notice on the DRCOG homepage, the TIP webpage, and then we also created a separate engagement site where folks could go to and provide comment as necessary. There were 2 e-blasts that were provided, along with a posting that is federally required in the Denver Post. We did weekly social media e-blasts and campaigns. And finally, the entire public process concluded at the March 19th public hearing at the last Board of Directors meeting. With that, happy to take any comments or questions you may have, but there is a proposed motion here on the screen.
Thank you, Todd. Are there questions for Todd this morning?
Yeah, thank you very much. And could you go back to the pie chart slide? I'm sorry if I missed your explanation. Could you describe active transportation, that piece of that pie?
Yeah, so this is not going to be road projects that contain active transportation components. This is solely going to be, whether it be a bike path, it could be widening of a path, the creation of a new path. But those sorts of projects made up a majority of that $495 million. And that's primarily the way that we had conducted the last calls for projects, in the way that the funds came in the years that we had. If you remember, it was quite a confusing time, but we did sort of split the funding types up into different sections of calls.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. Ron Papps.
Thank you, Chair. Ron Papps for DRCOG. Just to add a little bit of nuance to that, part of that was driven by Senate Bill 260, which was passed by the legislature prior to that last TIP process, and the legislature allocating a fairly significant bump up in the Multimodal Options Fund program using state funds, both fees and general fund resources, as well as a significant amount of now it seems like forever ago during the pandemic, but there were federal American Recovery Plan Act, ARPA funds that were awarded to the state, and the legislature allocated a pretty significant amount of those ARPA funds to the MMOF program as a one-time shot in the arm for that program. So we had a significant amount of money that really was only available for those projects. So I wouldn't say this is necessarily emblematic of past TIPs that vast amount, nor maybe indicative of what next TIPs might look like. It was pretty unique to this TIP just because of funding actions by the state legislature.
Yes, it appeared that, you know, that 14% for roads on that chart was a really small wedge compared to others. So, that's good news in our, you know, trying to improve the options for our region.
And correct me if I'm wrong, those are only the DRCOG allocated funds. That's not all of the funds and all the projects that are included in the TIP projects where funding is allocated by CDOT, for instance.
Correct. And I would say historically, what we have seen is that active transportation component is around 35 to 40%. I think another thing to point out, which is important, every roadway project that we have funded does have an active transportation component. And I think that's the way that our applications are structured, that we encourage those additional components added into what you typically have a normal roadway project.
Okay, thank you. Good information. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Todd. Dr. Guzman.
Thank you. Director Michael Guzman, RT. I need some help. When you have under here changed from draft to final, I'm looking particularly at project number 2018-011, where it says reduce prior funding by an amount and remove one pool project. Were these previously approved projects that have changed? This was a request, it says, by CDOT. They're removing a project and we're reallocating that funding somewhere else? Or is this the first time that we're looking at this and the original projects that were submitted are being changed at this time to divert that money somewhere else? And the reason I ask is because if this was approved, let's say, for example, for the project that is being removed originally, how would we have access to that history as it develops? Thank you.
Yep. So this specific project that you're talking about was part of the March administrative modifications. So it approved isn't the right word, but it was staff approved and was presented on the March DRCOG board agenda for information. This happens to be a situation where we're trying to manage an active TIP and a draft TIP at the same time. So this action was part of the 24 to 27 TIP, and we did need to release the document for public comment, the 26 document for public comment, before we were able to sort of lock down the 24 TIP. So some of these are actions that were from the previous TIP that were recorded on amendments. So this just happens to sort of record forward the information that's already taken place.
Other questions for? All right, there's a motion up on the screen to recommend the board of directors to the 2020 Transportation Improvement Program, including those adjustments containing a cheat document. All in favor? Opposition? All right, thank you very much, Todd, for your time. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. We'll move on to our last action item of the day, Transportation Advisory Committee Environmental Special Interest Seat, presented by Jacob Rieger, for multimodal transportation planning. Sir, you have the podium.
Hey, good morning. Thank you very much. So this item refers to a seat on our Transportation Advisory Committee. And by the way, no presentation today. I just have the memo up to just kind of follow along. So first thing is just a reminder about our Transportation Advisory Committee that works to advise our work and our MPO planning process here at DRCOG, and they make recommendations to you that you consider in the actions that you take. Our Transportation Advisory Committee is primarily local government staff oriented, and other, your agencies as well, and other sort of primarily public sector folks. But we do have 11 special interest seats on the Transportation Advisory Committee. These are subject matter experts in fields kind of aligned with transportation to help us do our work. We have a housing seat, we have an equity seat, we have a non-RTD transit seat, and the subject today is what we call our environmental seat. Environmental is one of those words that means lots of things, but in this context, it's a seat that's focused really on the private sector. It's traditionally been filled by a consultant who specializes in kind of project development, the National Environmental Policy Act, and kind of the environmental aspect of projects and developing projects and implementing projects. So we've had this seat filled for a very, very long period of time. Many of you know Rick Pilgrim, who recently retired, creating a vacancy on this seat that we needed to fill. So we did a solicitation for this seat. Let's see if I can. Sorry, I can't move the memo, but we did this is in your packet. We did a solicitation for this seat, and we worked through the American Council of Engineering Companies, I think is the acronym, the ACEC Colorado, who helped us do a solicitation because it's really their membership, again, the private sector consultants that we're targeting to help fill this seat. We received 4 applications and they were all eminently qualified. It was such a tough decision actually that as staff, we actually had informal interviews with all 4 of the candidates. The person we are recommending is Colleen Kirby-Roberts, who is a co-founder and a principal at Peak Consulting. This is an action that is actually formally nominated by our board chair, Director Baker, and directly approved by you. So with that, that's really all I have to share, but we are recommending Colleen Kirby-Roberts to fill this seat, and we're asking you to approve her candidacy, her approval for the environmental special interest seat on the Transportation Advisory Committee. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jacob. Is there any questions for Jacob? All right. Show of hands. Is there a recommendation to approve the appointment of Colleen Kirby-Roberts as the Environmental Special Interest Seat member of the Transportation Advisory Committee as nominated by the DRCOG Board Chair? Much. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposition? All right, motion passes. Thank you very much, Jacob, for your time. All right, we have already done the discussion item. We'll move on to administrative items. I will open the floor to our Colorado Department of Transportation report.
Okay, Darius Akbas provided us with a pretty good summary. I can start with that, and then Vice Chair Adams can chime in this time. We have a light agenda tomorrow. We're meeting only tomorrow, no meeting on Thursday. I'm just going to combine everything into the Wednesday meeting. We have on the agenda an update. It'll be really interesting to see an update on our bus staying program and recent significant doubling of service in one quarter and a tripling of service in another quarter. And we'll also get information about the ridership in those quarters. It'd be good news. He also lets us know that US DOT appears to be resuming typical grant operations. However, we're still expecting to see lags in the discretionary grant announcement and grant agreement review timelines. The NOFO for Safe Streets for All dropped on March 28. CDOT cannot pursue this program, but staff has reviewed the NOFO for changes and can provide insights to locals if requested. And then finally, Protect's new NOFO is anticipated for spring of 2025. CDOT does not have any submissions for this program within DRCOG's boundaries. One thing I would add to all of that is that we have a pretty good sense of what our budget will be for next year based upon the legislature's action so far, and it does, as every department seems to be having to deal with, require reductions because of the TABOR limits. So we've got, so far in a 2-year time frame, reductions to the general fund, transfer of, for the first year, fiscal year 26, of about $64 million. And another $22 million reduced from faster fees. Now, that's better than what we had reported a couple of months ago. We had preferred the greater general fund reduction versus the faster road safety surcharge, and the legislature did go along with that. So that's good, and the overall reduction is less than it had been. They're also seeking a sweep back of MMOF funds of about $71 million, and I understand that will be backfilled, or at least the idea is that we'll try to keep all the projects that are underway going, but there may need to be some adjustments in the timelines for other ones that are planned and committed to, but just haven't gotten underway yet. So that's all I have, Vice Chair Adams.
Well, Commissioner Cook, I really don't have anything to add other than, just to echo that we've had a couple of meetings where we talked about it in here, the safe routes to schools. And it's become something that I've gained a little bit more insight in, and it is certainly something that I support, and I'm glad to see that we're continuing to put money and support those kind of grants and initiatives to do that. So I think it's very important. But thank you again, Commissioner Cook.
Oh, I had one more thing, if I can. Our backup included an update on the GHG report that you all provided, and I just wanted to say I haven't gone through it, but I'm impressed with the thought and effort and whatnot that went into it, the commitment to those goals. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the update. We'll move on to our Regional Transportation District report.
Good morning, Deborah Johnson, General Manager and Chief Executive Officer at the Regional Transportation District. Just a couple of updates that are germane to this group here. Today, RTD is releasing its application period for its third year for Call for Partnership program. We have allocated $3 million for a funding period that spans from 2026 through 2028. And in doing so, wanted to share that applications are open until May 14th for eligible entities until 5 p.m. And on Monday, April 21st, staff is holding a virtual Q&A session that could provide some insights. Keeping in mind that the purpose of this program is to provide an opportunity to support local mobility programs that can provide that linkage into the greater RTD network. Also, I'd like to share that RTD is currently accepting comments on its draft Title VI program for the federal triennial period of 2025 through 2028. The three elements that are contained within the Title VI program are the public participation plan, Title VI policies, and a language assistance program. There is a dedicated web page, and we look forward to receiving comments. Most of you know that Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is required by the Federal Transportation Administration, considering that what we do, the operative word is public transportation, and any direct recipient of those funds must have a Title VI program. And so we're in the process of that. And once again, those comments are due by May 14th. I also like to share that RTD has implemented real-time tracking of its light rail vehicles using GPS. Previously, what the agency was doing was utilizing sensors that were on vehicles that basically would bounce off of our infrastructure network. And what that caused was a lack of accurate information. It was scheduled information as opposed to real-time information when light rail vehicles were arriving at a platform and when they were berthed. And so the feed now supports that information, and that's incorporated in our trip planning application, as well as the digital signage, which we call PIDS, being the public information display system. Speaking of light rail, I wanted to share with this group, recognizing that a lot of you and some of your constituents have been impacted, keeping in mind that RTD basically has a infrastructure network that is aging. And you've heard me speak about this before in this forum. We enhanced our preventive maintenance inspections along our light rail network, and that caused us to put into place some slow speed orders. We have been working diligently, keeping in mind that we do actually on the ground track inspections with our maintenance of way personnel actually walking the track, in addition to using sonar and other elements of technology. And we anticipate that the current speed restrictions that we have in place will be lifted. And within the coming weeks. And I say that because we could have snow again on Friday. And as every time we schedule this, it seems as if Mother Nature wants to play devil's advocate, right? So take that with a grain of salt. We are keeping everybody updated, but I really believe that we are putting our transportation network in a state of good repair, as one would want any transportation network to have that as a laser-like focus. What I will end with is that RTD is still focused on a welcoming transit environment, keeping in mind that we have a myriad of different people using our facilities and our network for reasons other than transit usage in some instances. And we have doubled down on our efforts in reference to a welcoming transit environment. And there's been several strategies that we have employed to ensure that we can enhance that experience, not for our customers only, but also for employees. And I'm proud to announce that our security-related calls have decreased by 60% between Q1 of 2022 and Q1 of 2025. And 3 years ago, and I'm looking over at Commissioner Cook, who may remember that we, reclaimed Union Station and did a lot of different things when people were using our bus concourse for things that really weren't germane to our current service delivery on a daily basis. But we're proud to say that we are making some headway, keeping in mind that we're better together and work with multiple jurisdictions and law enforcement agencies and being secondary law enforcement personnel to aid us with that. So I will yield the floor to see if our representative director, being Michael Guzman, has any additional information.
Okay, thank you. Michael Guzman, RTD District C, North and West Denver. I get to bring the fun stuff. Remember last time we talked about the libraries working with RTD? This Friday, April 18th, from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, we will have the Silent Pages Book Club, leaving Denver Union Station out to DIA, to DEN, and returning. You do need to register in advance. You can find the links on the RTD website. Just scroll all the way down to the bottom and the little calendar tablets will pop up and you can register there. My favorite thing to do, unfortunately, I will be working, so I can't go this time, but I will plan better next time. Other than that, we are looking at having discussion around the last year of our strategic plan and updates to regular information. So it's business as usual for the directors at RTD. Thank you.
More information or any updates from Director Larson? Director Soroy, do you have any?
These are so much different than ours. You have to press a button to turn them off. But anyway, no, nothing on my end that wasn't aptly covered by our GM and CEO.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our Regional Air Quality Council report.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and thank you. A number of items here to report out on. Kind of the most significant activity at the Regional Air Quality Council is the development of our next air quality plan to reach federal standards for summertime ozone. And we are in the end of our process of bringing forth the next plan to our board for consideration. That would be a full plan that projects out into the future how close to the standard we could achieve with the current mix of emission control programs and growth in the region, all of those factors involved. And our analysis, our technical analysis indicates that we won't make it by the federal due date of 2027. Our levels of ozone are just too high in our region to realistically project that we'll achieve the standard in 3 years from now. And so or 2 years now. The end result is that the state will be requesting what's called a voluntary downgrade or reclassification of the region from a serious classification to the next classification in the Clean Air Act, which is severe. We are already a severe non-attainment area for the other ozone standard that's in place. Complex, there's 2 standards for the same pollutant depending on the federal requirements. And so the region will be downgrading to a severe classification for the more stringent standard that we're working to achieve. And what that really means is that we are not required then to present a full air quality plan to the state for consideration this fall, and then submitting such a plan to the EPA for approval. And but what the consequence is that we will get that classification of severe for the region to accompany the other standard, which is also severe. And then we have additional time to achieve the standards till 2033. So it's a 6-year extension, which means that, yeah, you could look at it two ways. Either, hey, we have a pass here, we don't have to come up with new emission strategies. We have 6 more years to attain the standard, and that's an administrative hurdle that is much easier to achieve, because a lot of emission control programs have been adopted in recent years. They're just not mature. They take time to achieve the benefits, whether it's clean cars, clean trucks, lawn and garden retrofits, a number of strategies, oil and gas and other industrial strategies that the state has adopted. So that's the reality of the situation. But what it also means is that we have at least 6 more years of non-compliant air quality, which is a public health situation that my staff and my board is not pleased with. So we're hoping that we can continue our quest for furthering our improved air quality, not considering the federal requirements, but simply just managing things here in Colorado like we always do, and coming up with emission control strategies, reduction approaches in the near term that begin to gain the necessary reductions that we need to achieve, coupled with all of the kind of on the books, on the way strategies that are already in place. So that is the news that you may read about in the papers over the coming months. There was an article last week when the announcement was made to the Regional Air Quality Council of the state's intention. And so we'll pivot and we'll adapt our planning processes to achieve the ultimate goal of clean air in our region with more time, but in the meantime, coming up with reasonable strategies that we can achieve emission reductions in the near term and improve public health in our region over the coming years. And so to learn more about this process, the analysis that we've gone through to better understand our situation, our emission trends, and the needs for additional strategies, we'll be hosting a modeling forum, what we call our Air Quality Forum, tomorrow afternoon. If you're interested, just go to the RAQC's RAC, raqc.org, the RAC page, and we have those meeting announcements up. And so you could learn about what it takes to analyze the region, or how we calculate the emissions by category, and how we look at the trends, and then how we do our projections. So great information tomorrow afternoon. And another announcement then for our region is we're continuing to implement strategies at RAC. We not only do the planning and come up with these projections and the policy recommendations for the state to consider, we also do things. And one of the things that we do with monies that this board has approved in part of the TIP process that we just learned about, there's funding that is allocated to the Regional Air Quality Council to actually implement emission control strategies. And one of our strategies is related to anti-idling. Idling of vehicles and equipment is a significant source of emissions. And so we have a strong program to electrify food trucks. So on Earth Day next week, on April 22, there'll be an electric food truck demo. So we've all been to the food truck events or activities in the park, and those dang generators just chug away, and they're noisy and they smell and they pollute our air in what we would hope would be more of a healthy, natural situation. And so the solution is get rid of those gas generators and go electric. And so we fund electric food truck retrofits, and we'll be having a demo event on April 22 on Earth Day. Again, go to our webpage, come, and we'll get you free food too. So you pass that along to anyone who you think might be interested. And that's on 5th and Santa Fe here in central Denver on Earth Day. And the final announcement I have is we're recruiting for board members. About April of every year, we get turnover in our board, and we are always looking for great people to serve on our board of directors. We have representation of local government, of industry, of environmental and academia, citizens, transportation, and many of you have served on our board. Our executive director, Mr. X, he serves on our board for a gajillion years, I think. So DRCOG has a seat on the board, and it's always filled by the executive director, and guess who that is? And so we're pleased to have Doug with us, but we're also looking for candidates. And so if you are interested, you know, let me know, or if you know of another person in your team or in your circle that might be interested in serving on our board, please let me know. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks for the report. I'll open the floor for any members who have comments at this time. All right, our next meeting is May 20th. Thank you for having me as your chair today. The meeting is adjourned. I thank you all for coming. And these free get out of jail passes are here with Cam. So thank you again, everyone. Thank you to staff for having me, and enjoy your day.